Have you stopped to ask yourself what your competitors might be planning in terms of their growth for 2026? Today's guest is Nicole Larson, the National Head of Retail Research at Colliers, and she's here to answer that exact question. She's going to give us data on grocery spending, restaurant expansion, retail trends, retail supply, and what's going to shape the year ahead. If you run a brand and you're looking to grow in 2026, this is an absolute must listen. You know, one of the biggest challenges in the kitchen, managing that fryer oil. It's messy, it's hot, somebody's gonna spill it, and quite frankly, nobody ever actually wants to take on that responsibility, or even worse, they lie and they say they did it. Nobody wants that job. That's where Restaurant Technologies comes in. Their total oil management system takes care of everything. It's completely automated. So there's no back and forth on who does what and when, or no one's getting burnt. And there's no issue of any slip or fall because maybe you didn't clean it up entirely. They automate the entire process. They deliver it, they filter it, they pick it up, and they recycle it. No burns, no spills, no hazards, just a safer, more efficient process and a safer restaurant. And here's the thing, there's no upfront cost. So if you want to cut down on accidents, protect your team, and keep your kitchen running smooth, just head over to rti-inc.com or just give them a call. 888-796-4997 and get started today. Welcome back to Close Monday. I'm your host, Kyle and Sarah, and today we're joined by somebody who makes the retail world make sense. And for you guys, that means restaurants, okay? Retail, restaurants, you may hear that interchange, but you guys are retail, and this is all about you. So Nicole Larson is the National Research Manager for Retail at Colliers. She turns complex data into insight that brands use to make growth decisions. Okay, huge for you guys. So you see her work in Bloomberg, Retail Dive, CoStar News, social media, and most recently in, I don't even know how to pronounce this. Is it Mapic? Mapic 2025 in France. It's the biggest commercial real estate conference in Europe. She spent the week there studying global trends, talking to leaders, talking to real estate professionals, comparing basically what the US gets right and kind of what we don't get right. So perfect timing for what we want to talk about today. But before we dig into the reports you sent me and what they mean for restaurant franchises and all that stuff and restaurants in general, I want to start on a lighter note, if that's okay with you.
Yeah.
All right. So now I know you live in South Florida, and the real question is, let's say, what's your favorite restaurant down there?
Ooh, I will say there's no better place for Cuban food than Miami, which is where I was born and raised. Don't try to get Cuban food anywhere else. It
No.
doesn't taste as good as Miami. I will say that. My favorite quick service, I'm a sucker for Chick-fil-A. They do get my business, unfortunately, every week.
Okay. Now, let's say you're in one of those Cuban spots, right? You don't have to name it, but Chick-fil-A, that's pretty much a standard. They're not going to ask you this question, I don't think, but somebody on the independent side might. And let's just say the owner's at the tables with 5 other local restaurant operators, and they look at you and say, hey, I know your stuff. Like, I know your work. What's one thing we need to know for 2026 as we start to grow our brands? What are you telling that table?
Ooh, I really like that. So I'm actually already, starting to look at what we should look out for in the industry for 2026. And
Mm.
we really need to look out for our US consumer. We need to take care of them. So that's going to include providing value to them. I mean, Chili's was such an amazing brand earlier this year that I would say got it right with their consumers.
Mm-hmm.
And whether you're a chain or independently owned, I think just looking out for where your consumers are. If you even follow consumer index, that really flip-flops every single month. So some months, we're feeling really confident in our government, we're feeling really confident in our country. As of recently, since the government shut down, obviously our consumers weren't feeling as confident, and that's when they start to hold on to their dollars. So it's really just
Mm.
monitoring what the consumers are doing. Are they still going out to eat? Are they holding on to their dollars a little bit more? But unfortunately, those trends change every single month, but that's what makes retail fun.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of why you have a job, right? They stay on top of those type of trends, and I'm excited to have you here because I know that one of the things that a lot of operators don't think about and was addressed in one of the reports you had sent me, which by the way, guys, all these reports will be linked in the show notes. But one of the most interesting reports was about how much money the average household spends on groceries, which you have at about $11,000 a year. What does that level of spend indicate? Like that number on a standalone doesn't really mean too much to me. I mean, it made me kind of think to myself, like, man, am I spending $11,000 a year on groceries? But how does that number correlate? And what does it mean to operators today?
Yeah, so I mean, what we saw in, I would say, late 2024, early 2025 is that consumers were actually going out to eat more than they were spending on groceries because there was this idea, of inflation and that my groceries are just too expensive. It makes more sense for me to go out to eat. Someone else is cooking, someone else is cleaning. I have less work to do. We saw that actually taper off after this summer of 2025.
Mm,
So now it's really sort of like a scurry, and you're starting to see it now. All of these grocers are really popping up everywhere. So you're seeing Aldi in basically every major shopping center now. Now our grocers are now also competing with international grocers, so whether that's an H Mart or something like that. So there is a lot more competition in the grocery space that we're seeing now. So that $11,000 used to just go to the nearest grocery store by your house, right?
right.
Now that all of those dollars are being spread at a bunch of different locations. So it's
Hmm.
definitely gotten more competitive over the past 2 years, I would say.
And don't you think, just anecdotally, like, I feel like they are a direct threat, or they're going after restaurants just in the way they prepare meals and present meals. Like I know Whole Foods has the hot bars and the salad bars, which are always cranking at lunchtime when I'm out and about. But they also have those larger like meal kits now that are like less than $30 and feed six people. Have you seen any conversation around that? Like their direct approach to possibly, not taking out a restaurant, but like competing with restaurants?
One trend that we actually saw, and of course this came post-pandemic when a lot more of us were working at home or maybe we were still stuck at home, was this idea of the consumer actually doing their grocery shopping more during the day, and then it led for time after work for other activities, which is why I think you saw wellness really blow up from there too. So
Mm,
there was this really big sort of lunchtime competition where it used to just be, you go to the local quick service or the local sandwich or deli shop during lunchtime, but it actually flipped to where we saw more consumers going to those grocers that have sort of like the meal prep where you could just grab it out of the refrigerator, grab some food, or go to the hot bar and grab lunch instead
mhm.
of going to the drive-through. So I think that really created a lot of competition, and we're still seeing that now.
Yeah. I get that part because it's such a, like, how did our parents do it? I really say this all the time. I say it about having dinner every night around the table, or like even
Mhm.
eating out. Why do we not eat out as much? And all these things that have changed so much over time. And just even in the last post COVID era, then since we've had a baby again in our life, trying to get this, just get the groceries, bring it home, cook it, and get to bed at a reasonable hour seems like impossible. I think grocery stores, and I think you've mentioned this in the article too, about layout and speed and convenience. How much are they leaning into that, and how does that impact restaurants, do you think?
Yeah, so I mean, I think, of course, after the pandemic, during the pandemic, we saw this surge of omni-channel across really all retail segments, right? Like, if you were a big box retailer, you had to have the parking spots for the drive up. Even if you were a fast food restaurant, you needed that parking spot so they could bring the food to your car. We've actually seen the elimination of a lot of those. Just to give you an example, the Target closest by me, apparently they didn't pull the right permits, so the city actually made them take out the drive up spot. So those
Oh,
don't even
wow.
exist at like my local Target. I don't think that's the case for a lot of them. But what happened was you saw those like sort of quick permit filings like, yeah, sure, get it done. There's a need for it. And then now that we're 5 years post, which is really crazy to say, but 5 years post, they're
Yeah.
like, okay, you got to do it the right way now, or you got to get rid of the spaces. But I say all that to say what we saw during the pandemic and, maybe 1 to 2 years after is that grocery omni-channel didn't really grow as much as we thought it would. We thought a lot more people would be online grocery shopping. We thought a lot more people would get those groceries delivered to their house.
Mhm.
It still is a growing segment, but it didn't grow as fast, and it's still not growing as fast as we thought it would. I think, more consumers are becoming a little bit more comfortable now that like Target offers the delivery to your door. Walmart also has a really fabulous delivery service as well. So I think when those bigger retailers get it right, and then it starts to trickle down into those maybe smaller grocery operators, then the consumers will feel more comfortable. But honestly, it hasn't taken off like we thought it would.
Hmm. And just because I'm going to assume that most people are kind of driving or busy or maybe just don't even know, tell me exactly what you mean by omni-channel.
Yeah, so omnichannel is really just blending the physical and the digital together. So it's really interesting. The media loves to like make retail always the bad guy of real estate, right? And
Hmm.
so back when that was announced during the pandemic, we were also excited. We were like, "Oh my gosh, there's a way to integrate the two and this is going to make shopping so easy." And the
Yeah.
media was like, "They're competitors. Online is going to take over brick and mortar retail."
Yep.
And so now, like, I call them like besties, like physical and digital. That's what omnichannel is really blending the two to make sure that you have the best shopping experience for your customers.
Yeah. I mean, I'm definitely that person. I'm online ordering, I'm returning in person. Like, I don't see how
Whatever's
much.
easiest.
Yeah, right. Exactly. It's all about convenience. And I think the technology that allows this to happen, I think most people don't really realize what it's taken to happen so quickly. And now you have things like AI that are going to impact, I think, both the grocery and the restaurant store and the restaurants rather, which will be interesting to watch. What do you think this means? Like this technology, it continues to evolve, seemingly like AI, like I said, or the self checkout or checking prices while you're in the aisle. All this stuff that comes together for me, like the Whole Foods app has all of the stuff that I recently ordered, so I can just click, 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 and go, and they'll be here in 2 hours. What does this mean, like for the next 5 years? Like how does this affect everybody, really?
Yeah, so last year we actually did a AI and retail report where we actually surveyed retailers and consumers, asked them basically the same questions like,
Mm.
how do you feel about AI or robotics or technology in your stores? And what was really interesting is that the retailers were really excited about it and the consumers were very pessimistic about it. So what
Weird.
we found is that although the people who maybe own the brands who work in the stores are looking forward to maybe having some helping robotic hands or maybe some automated systems, the consumers don't necessarily trust it as much currently. And part of that I understand, right? Because there's like this idea that the robot's going to take my job, which isn't,
Right.
it's not going to happen. It can't happen. I mean,
Yeah, I get it.
some of us can't even figure out how to scan a barcode. So I don't know how a robot
Yeah,
can.
I need help half the time I'm there anyway. I'm the guy that puts the red light up, like, "This isn't scanning." Yeah, for sure.
Exactly. So I think there was a little bit of fear with that. I think, at the end of the day, us as consumers here in the United States, we're so adaptable. So even though sometimes we don't necessarily like something, we'll still do it. I mean, how many brand or how many consumers have boycotted brands because of like the self checkouts or the
Yeah,
different rules that they announce about AI and things like that, but we still end up shopping at them anyway.
yeah. People also like to complain too, right? There's that too, that benefit. But I do think, and you can tell me what your thought is specifically on restaurants. Like, there's this debate with restaurants that they're always talking about how they could use the tech on the labor side or the inventory side or payroll side. Forget about the ordering stuff and things of that nature. But I feel like it's going to come down to convenience. And I think about this all the time, like the independent coffee shops and Starbucks. I'm not a huge fan of Starbucks coffee, but I'm a huge fan of their app and the convenience. And do you think that is going to have a continued impact? I think it is. I haven't seen any evidence or I haven't read about it if it's out there about the impact of not having that technology for some of these restaurants or even restaurant franchises that are not on it, like the Starbucks or the McDonald's or the Chipotle's of the world. Have anything on that you think would continue to be an issue moving forward or a topic
I
of conversation
mean,
at least?
you've already started to see it, in 2020, those retailers that did not integrate quickly, including
Mhm.
some sort of omni-channel strategy, they died, right? Or they had to close a big chunk of their stores. We're continuing to see that. The retailers that are closing right now, it's, not that they're a bad brand, it's that they didn't put in the work to get the technology to blend sort of that omni-channel into their strategy, and unfortunately, that's why their brand no longer exists. So, I think there's really a competitiveness in the retail industry that was just absolutely accelerated once the pandemic came. The pandemic really changed the entire retail industry. It
Yeah.
accelerated growth. I don't think we were supposed to be where we are today. I think it maybe another 5 to 10 years out, but it really
Wow.
accelerated this growth that we had. Yeah, and so, I mean, Target sales during the pandemic were just absolutely insane. Bath& and Body Works was selling their whole business was supported by those little, hand sanitizers that are like
Oh, right, right, right.
and
Yeah,
so
yeah.
their whole business was propped up by, like, soap and hand sanitizers.
Wow.
There was really this acceleration for a lot of brands, and now you're starting to see more of a stabilization, but again, it's all about competition, it's all about making sure that you have the best and new exciting tech, and consumers read about these brands. You see all this news on TikTok and Instagram
Mhm.
and X, and sometimes it lands right with the consumers when they see I think I'll use Sweetgreen for an example. When they announced that sort of salad making robot that it's
Yeah,
on
right.
a line, that and it drops your ingredients. I think a lot of people like that, and I don't think they felt that it was taking away jobs. I don't think they felt like it was anything bad with that. So I think that's an example of doing it right. Of course, there are some instances where just consumers, I don't know why, for some reason, they just really hate what certain
Yeah.
brands are doing. Some people can't get it right. But again, it all leads down to, are you listening to what your consumers are saying? Are you surveying them constantly to see what they're interested in? And it's important too to recognize the different generations. I would say my grandparents probably don't appreciate the same technology that I
Right.
do in stores. And so it's really important that they're listening to the voices of the youngest and the oldest customers that they have.
Yeah, I think it's time to bring back those old the paper, like, comment cards. There's a lot I know there's a lot of tech that does this, but I feel like those were, like, the best in the moment thing. People kinda get caught at that moment at dinner, like, "I'm just gonna fill this out."
The best my favorite thing to do is literally sit on Instagram and TikTok, go on retail brand pages, and anytime they just post, like a little ad or something, I love reading the comments because that's where you get all the information, and some people are like, That's looks terrible, that doesn't look good, ooh, I hate that, ooh, I love
Yeah.
that, oh my gosh," and people will put in some of their, like, best ideas. I'm like, "The brands should really use AI to gather all that information
Yeah.
and
That's a
use
good
use
call.
it."
That's
Yeah.
a good call. I know there's a lot of tech out there that does this stuff, but I'm with you on that because that's where people are actually saying, "Oh, it looks nothing like that when I ordered it," or, "No, they're not, that crowded. You can get in whenever you want," or whatever that is. Yeah, those feedback loops was a thing that a lot of restaurants, a whole separate show, honestly, they don't pay attention to, right? That conversation is not being had. They leave comments replied on Yelp or Google, which is a big mistake. But yeah, you're right. That feedback loop is massive. I know retailers rely on that heavily, but for some reason, restaurants seem to. Well, I mean, the big guys obviously do, but for the most part, a lot of the emerging brands and stuff that I deal with, I don't think it's even on their radar, unfortunately.
It should be.
Yeah, for real. I mean, especially since now we'll talk about what really matters here, the real estate portion of it. Year to date, so basically 3/4 of the year, 1/5 of the leasing has been F&B brands, concepts. Is that
Yeah,
accurate? Okay.
yes.
So what does that tell us?
Yeah, so, I mean, it really just shows the strength, the competitiveness also of the segment. Also, a lot of it has been driven by net lease. A trend that we're watching to me that is probably the most alarming thing I would say in the retail industry is we're really in a space squeeze right now. So this year
Mm,
we were at a historically low amount of retail under construction. A lot of the new construction we saw was either mixed use development, which of course doesn't leave much space for retail. And usually it's bottom floor. You're probably going to have a coffee shop, maybe a deli, something, maybe some sort of simple quick service restaurant that goes below there. Another subtype that we saw of new construction was more of the freestanding locations, and a lot of the stores that have closed earlier this year, the that were freestanding, they were taken on by some sort of restaurant as well. And so that's where we saw a little bit more of that conversion. So I think that's why we're seeing so much of this subtype being created as far as new retail or retail supply comes along. We're not seeing, or absolutely not, we're not seeing any new major malls being
mm,
developed. We're hardly seeing any new lifestyle centers come up unless they're in, a more suburban market, or maybe something had to be demolished for them to redevelop. But new retail construction is very tight right now. So it was really interesting to me to see that, basically 20% of all leases this year came from a food and beverage operator. And I mean, we're also starting to see all these new F&B concepts pull up. I mean, we have the swigs, we have all these new
Yeah.
drink and really small drink and coffee operators, which I find really interesting. Honestly, historically, the average size of a lease continues to shrink. And that's a trend that emerged post COVID. So we're continuing to see leases get smaller. We're also continuing to see the lease term get smaller. So we're at about averaging about 3 to 5 years on an average lease now.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
What so many questions, but like that's the one thing I'm struggling with. Obviously, I work with emerging brands which don't have a lot of name recognition. Number one, right? Some of them are franchises, so that's a hurdle to get into some spaces, dealing with the credit issue and things of that nature. But one thing I've told them is you have to be flexible because they're so stuck on certain sets of criteria or certain markets, but the opportunities are so few and far between, and it's so competitive that the only thing you can do is to be flexible and adapt your model. Like if you're dead set that your layout has to be a certain way and you're looking for that space, well, you just made the market a whole lot smaller. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. I mean, it's really competitive out there to find space. I mean, that's our biggest issue. We're really excited to work with brands, but we're like, if you find the perfect space, you got to take it because it's probably not likely to come up again. Another thing we're seeing, I won't name any landlords, but a lot of the landlords are requiring clustering as well. So
Mm,
yeah, so meaning you wanna open up in Chicago? Okay, great. You also need to open a store in, Phoenix, Arizona now if you wanna
yeah.
get that prime Chicago space. So, we're seeing a lot of that happening as well.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which is maybe what's driving all of that new growth that we're seeing for these brands as well, but it's just really competitive and the landlords continue to drive that
Wow.
competition.
So they don't even mean clustering because I know a lot of these guys, the likelihood that they have, something in Chicago and then, five other opportunities outside of that is pretty rare. So you're talking about clustering in terms of their portfolio.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
They're like your growth partner.
They'll
You're raising one. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's good and bad, right? Because they're essentially your business partner at that point, and they're saying, "Okay, well, you wanna grow fast? Okay, we have this, and these vacancies that are left at our centers."
It's not horrible. Yeah.
Yeah, it's, quite expensive if you had just 1 store in mind and now you have to
Yeah.
open up 5.
Yeah. Let's talk about that, partner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At that point, you're not partners, but I think it is good though because what we're starting to see, and these are some of the things I actually heard when I was in France at the MAPIC convention, is that a lot of the European landlords are, they do it very differently than we do here in the United States. So one of the landlords actually compared themselves to Netflix, and I was like, in what way? And they basically said that they want to feel like their platform, basically saying their portfolio is top tier, that it's providing good content. So always refreshing their properties to make sure that they have, something interesting that makes people want to visit, whether that's like just an installation at their properties or whether that's an actual, new and upcoming brand that's interesting to them. They want to make sure that it's very curated. So, on Netflix, you can go and say, okay, I'm a crime junkie. Here's every crime documentary or show I could ever watch. So they want to make sure that there's something for everyone there. And so they just even said the overall look of the Netflix platform is very clean and easy to use and easy to understand. And that's how they want their consumers to understand their portfolio. Now, what they also said that's really interesting that I think we don't do a very good job of here in the US is that they said they want every single property within their portfolio to feel different. Whereas I think here in the US, we do this clustering where we have the same tenants in
Yeah.
in all of those in the landlord portfolio. And so, you go to one center here in Miami and you go to another center in Atlanta and they probably look very similar, have the same
Yeah.
type of tenants, but
Right.
they're
Right.
saying over in Europe that they actually want the feel and the tenant mix to be different in
Hmm.
all the different cities that they have properties in.
And that being like geographically driven or just driven by like their holistic approach to their portfolio? Like what drives that change?
They actually Yeah, they were actually mentioning that it's driven by, like, consumer demand, so they want their consumers to know that they're always gonna have a good experience at their properties, but they also want them to know that it's not just gonna be a copy and paste at every one of their centers, that each
Yeah.
one will have a different experience.
That makes sense. I mean, I've definitely felt that. You're in some mall and you're like, "What the heck are these guys doing here?"
Yeah. And I love that. I love being able to know that, like, there's always gonna be something different instead of, like, the same old, same old.
Yeah, because you don't wanna be in I mean, not that anyone thinks like this, but if you're in one mall and you're like, "I don't even know where I am." This could be a mall in Atlanta, it could be a mall in New York, it could be a mall in Chicago. It looks exactly and feels the same as every other
Mhm.
one. So, yeah, little sanitary. I get that. That's cool. Um, cool for restaurants, definitely for sure. Provides unique opportunities for different brands to have a different um you talk about, as far as regional trends, talk about how these rural markets are an untapped opportunity. I'm a huge believer in that. I'm a big believer that it's location, location, location is kind of an old, outdated thing. I think the locations that make the most sense, particularly for restaurants, are where the math works. And I think these suburban markets would shock people in terms of the volume that they do and the rents that they have. Can you talk a little about that and how operators can maybe vet these suburban markets as what's really an opportunity and what's not?
Yeah, I mean, again, it goes back to we had this insane sort of growth that nobody expected after
Mhm.
2020. So we saw all of these markets that maybe shouldn't have grown as quickly as they did. I mean, Bozeman, Montana is one that
Yeah,
is on
huge one.
fire.
I know.
Yeah, Boise, Idaho. So it wasn't for 2024. I believe it was 2023. Don't quote me on this, but it was either 23 or 24 that Idaho actually received the most amount of new uh uh how would I say this? New move-ins into the state. So their population really grew after the pandemic, a lot larger than Florida, which is even crazy to say. And Florida was
Oh,
having like
wow.
1,000 people move to the state a day. Thankfully, that slowed down a little bit, but
There's more
um
New Yorkers coming every other week there.
yeah, pretty much. So, it was really interesting and we continue to see it. I mean, I just put out a blog earlier this summer that all of the top market I do a study every quarter of which markets are within the top 5 of most retail under construction.
Mhm.
And all of the markets within Texas landed within the top 5. So it really yeah, it really just shows wherever there's high retail growth, that's where the people are going because obviously we need these goods, we need these services. So I think that's something that really emerged after the pandemic. Now, site selection has gotten just so much more complex than it used to be. I mean, before, people and sometimes I work with brands that they're like, "Okay, I just need to know the population and the median income." And I'm like, "No, no, no. There's a lot more we gotta understand here."
Right.
Yeah, so, like, I really like to understand who the brand's, target consumer is, and then we try to match that with, different areas to say, like, "Okay, these are your hot zones across the United States. If this is who you want your target consumer to be, maybe that's someone, I don't know, 18 to 30, and they make, 50 to 100,000, and, we can even start to get into the nitty-gritty of, like, how much do they spend eating out? How much do they spend on,
Yeah.
what was a funny one that I looked at the other day? It's like, how much do they spend on donuts a year? Like, we can really get
Shit, somebody's
into
tracking that, that's not good.
yeah, we can get into how much do they spend on fine jewelry a year? How much do they spend on sneakers? Like, we can really get into, a breakdown of a consumer spend, and so that's what I really like to see, like, what are some aside from the basic demographics that we all use, that's super common, aside from the foot traffic as well, that has become just an absolute must when you're doing site selection. So I think even like foot traffic is really basic information at this point. Now we need to get to, you know, refine a little bit further and say, okay, let's understand their spend or their spend potential. And then we can start to make site selection decisions from there.
Yeah, that's fantastic because I mean, you'd be shocked at the lack of strategy some of these emerging brands, which is for some reason I enjoy that, like the educational piece, and that's a huge nugget you just dropped there. But one of the groups that I'm working with says is that they lean into their digital presence, particularly their social media, and they don't care about pylon signage. They don't care about about having the most visibility. they're not so concerned about the 1 mile radius around there and some of those habits that you mentioned or their spending patterns because they feel like it can be driven by their digital presence. Are you seeing brands? And I know you and I are big believers in the social stuff, so maybe we're a little bit biased, but are brands really doing the right thing when it comes to their marketing digital? Are they still missing what's out there in your opinion, particularly restaurants?
To me, the one and I bring it back to Jilly's. They were the ones I think that did it right because it's really a blend. You can't lean 100% on social media. You can't 100% lean on foot traffic and demographics to make the decisions for you. You really have to blend sort of everything
Mhm.
all together to come up with a decision. There was a brand actually, not a restaurateur, but it was an apparel brand that we work with and, they gave us their sort of sales information. They gave us their online sales. And usually when we get that, we're like, that's not relevant. Online sales, not important to us when we're doing, site selection. But I was like, let me see something with the online sales. Something is looking weird to me, or something's looking really, really fun
Mm,
in my view. And what I noticed is they were killing it in online sales in
mm,
Salt Lake City. And I was like, do they have any stores in Salt Lake City? They don't. And I was like, "You guys, this is such a missed opportunity. You are
yeah.
killing it in online sales because you don't have a presence there." And so sometimes you do have to look for like outlying information that you typically would not consider in site selection or when
Mhm.
you're working with a new emerging brand where you have to determine that. And with new brands, it's hard to do that because they don't have that
Yeah.
sort of, and especially with food, they don't have the online sales
Yeah.
to tell you, but I don't know that a lot of brands are doing this. I could kind of see the future of site selection also working with like social media. Can we see where our customers are tweeting from or posting their
Mhm. Yeah. Oh, for sure.
I could totally see that being the future or at least a future piece of site selection.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that I think about is like the actual deliveries made via DoorDash and what that radius looks like. They get that generic 5 mile radius or 3 mile
Mhm.
radius is, but if you can see that if you're having like, you know, a large portion going to one side of town versus another, that would certainly be an indicator to me that you have an opportunity on the other side of town. But I always tell folks that like I look at, everyone's like, this is a Chipotle center or this is a Starbucks center or this is Chick-fil-A's here. That's a good indicator. But I think what's a great indicator, and maybe you can steal this if you want, but just give me credit. The loyalty programs. So
Mhm.
the Starbucks and the Chipotle's that have these fantastic loyalty programs, they have them because they're so invested in them. And when they make a real estate decision, I think that's an indicator of what's happening in that market for their core customer. They feel like they can drive more loyalty or more of their loyal customers to their door by opening a store there. So I think the loyalty apps are actually another part of the digital footprint that most people don't think about as being any kind of real estate indicator, but just came to my head the other day. And I'm like, that might be a thing.
No, I totally agree. Unfortunately, a lot of brands don't have it and they need to, so
I
that's
know.
another story.
Well, 'cause it's a pain in the ass. Like, I don't want to open up 10 different apps, how many different, but if they integrate into the app, I think that's a major thing.
Yeah.
All right. So we're gonna wrap up here, but I would like to end with two things. One will be basically actionable things. So the very pointed things. And if you don't know or we don't want to say or whatever, don't say it. But I would love your insight on some of these things if you can. And then we're gonna end with some quick fire questions.
Oh, okay.
Um, yeah, nothing too actually. Are they? No, nothing too crazy. All right. We talked about these smaller suburban markets, like the data we went through. But if there was one piece of data that franchisors specifically should focus on in 2026, what would you say that it should be? Or three?
No, honestly, if I could just pick one, it would actually be tapestry segmentations.
Mhm.
So every brand already knows who their consumer is, or maybe they're deciding who their future consumer is. So a lot of different groups do this. I mean, we use Esri, we use spatial AI to do it. There are, I think Experian does one as well. Whichever one you use, they're all fabulous, honestly, but it
Mhm.
really helps to define who your consumer is. Shameless plug. I love spatial AI because they actually blend social media with their consumer tapestry segments. So it'll actually tell you what that consumer group is hashtagging live, which is like hilarious to me. They Like about
That's really
sports,
cool.
food, and politics. Yeah, like, it'll show you which celebrities they follow on social media, so, then I feel like that even starts to play into marketing because then
Very telling.
yeah, you can integrate those, influencers or celebrities into to your marketing
Oh
in your
yeah.
business, but, I mean, I think that is really key. It's just really understanding your consumer. I feel like we work with so many brands, and sometimes they don't even consider their consumer when they're making the site selection decisions, which I
Mhm.
think is a big mistake.
Wild. Yeah, I mean, we've used, like a Buxton kind of thing, which
Mhm.
was that heat map, which is really cool. I know Placer has, like, the retail nodes and things of that nature,
Yeah.
but I think you have to do it. I know some of this stuff can be expensive for smaller brands, but I urge them to make the investment because there's no more important piece of data than that, so I agree with you. Um, Consumer signals you mentioned in the beginning, what signals matter most right now? Like, what's something that they should be really kind of honing in on? I know these operators are not typically tuning into the CNBCs of the world or necessarily staying up to date on some of these things, but if there's one thing that they could focus on, what's most important?
Honestly, right now, retail sales, I think it is a big indicator of where we're at. I mean, I love when people are on Instagram and they see, it says, I don't know, Skims on sale for 50% off, and everyone's
Oh,
like, recession indicator.
that's just an indicator that boxes are going to be showing up at my house. To me,
Yeah.
that's
Well, so yeah, I mean, retail sales, we're forecasting retail sales are actually going to decrease next year. There will still be some growth, but the growth is going to be muted just because we're including inflation in there. We're including
mm,
the hikes of the tariffs. So we do expect sales to be more muted. We expect consumers to pull back a little bit next year. It's not going to be anything extreme, but I do think that's something that's an indicator that we should always be looking at is sales, and I think we need to look at it a little bit more often than we typically do right now.
yeah, I agree. That's interesting. I guess there is so much, uncertainty. Everyone that's a kind of been a buzzword these last couple months, and I think that's still going to be a little bit of a hangover to 2026, in my opinion. Um, on the other side, on sort of like the flip side of this, as you're looking at a market, it's kind of like you don't want to be too late either. So, what would you say, or what do you look at as any kind of indicator that a market might be overheating or oversaturated?
Well, if they don't have any space, it's
That's a big one. Oh,
if you
yeah.
can only find off-market space, then you know you're in trouble.
The on-market, off-market specials? Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much. No, I mean, I think that's really how you can tell is by identifying which markets maybe have a little bit more supply than demand. So, I mean, you're even starting to see Miami is actually in one of those high
Yeah.
retail construction zones now because, we did have such a rush of people move here and now things have slowed down. Texas, the demand is still there, even though they do have a lot of new retail construction coming online. But I think you're starting to see the Southeast cool down a little bit. The
Mm,
central markets, I would say, are definitely heating up. The West Coast is still a little bit muted for now as well.
mm. Yeah. I just by like, franchisee interests, I'm in all these calls with these groups of where calls are coming from. That's all often an indicator to me. Like, oh, wow, how'd they pick this place? Like Beaumont, Texas popped up on. I'm like, why wouldn't you just go to Houston? But there's a reason, right? Like, so it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
All right. So let's jump to the quick fire. We're running a little bit long here. So these are quick fire questions. Shortest answers you can give. You don't have to put too much thought into them. All right. I got to get a song because I feel like the song or like a beat would add more pressure, and I feel like I haven't gotten that across yet. So I'll spare you that. I don't have it right now.
Okay,
So
good. I'm glad. Started in 2026.
next guest. All
Yeah.
right. One trend that operators overrate
Oh,
or indicator or one sort of piece of data that they over.
foot traffic.
Interesting. Okay. One trend operators or one piece of data point that operators underrate.
Their consumer data. We work with brands sometimes that they're like, "I don't even know who my customer is," and I just wanna pound my head on the wall.
Wow. Like, why am I here? I put out an article. Yeah. Literally screaming about this stuff. Okay. What's a common mistake that most brands make or brands make when they're entering a new market?
Ooh, expanding too rapidly.
So true. One metric every franchisor should track weekly, monthly, quarterly. What's most important for them to track?
I wanna say sales per square foot.
Really? They should their own or co-tenants or both.
I would say all of the above. They really should, if they can get the sales. I know it's not easy, but get to know your your neighbors in the center, and see how they're doing so you can compare to how you're doing.
Yeah. I have a follow-up question, which I want to ask, because it'll be like a whole other hour, but I'll ask you when I see you in a couple weeks.
Offline, yeah.
What's one consumer shift that you see happening right now, maybe we touched on, that will matter the most in 2026?
Ooh. So this has been a trend that we've actually seen post COVID a lot, but you're noticing every year the consumers are getting into some sort of category that involves collectibles. So, for example, it was beauty for a
Mm,
while. That's why we had Sephora open up in every strip center possible, right?
yeah.
Or lifestyle center. And it's because the consumers wanted, the little lipstick or something
Mhm.
small. Now we have toys, right? You're seeing Pop Mart, you're seeing Miniso pop up everywhere. Everyone needs a little bag charm, Labubu, whatever you want,
Yeah.
whatever you want to get
Yeah,
call it.
yeah, right.
So I don't know. I don't know what the category will be for 2026. I got to stay on TikTok to figure it out. But I think again, it's like those little luxuries that we can have that are under $50, makes you happy, brings you joy, but doesn't break the bank.
Interesting. So not necessarily even something that they're giving away, or like a one of a thousand kind of thing, but something unique.
Yeah, just something that makes you happy, but it's still something that doesn't, break your budget, but
Um,
it's something unique and it still brings it. I don't know what it'll be. I'm like really thinking about it. I couldn't believe when Pop Mart exploded at the end of last year. So I'm looking out for that next one.
yeah, who's next, right? Yeah. All right. So last one is one layout or site feature that restaurants, in your personal opinion or your professional opinion, or I guess they're kind of both, they kind of come together, that they need to fix. That's something that's like, what's something that really annoys you? Like, hey, this, you guys got to fix
Broken technology. Don't I hate the screens that are black. I hate the iPads that are broken. Just
this.
I hate that. Just fix it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh man, yeah, exactly. Because the whole thing about that tech thing is they say, oh, well, they never call out sick. They always show up on time. But then you get there and it's broken. You're like, well,
Yeah. Well, now I can't order.
I lost that argument. Yeah. All right. So cool. So thank you for all of this. I know it's a lot of information. There's probably so much more to get into, and we're going to include all of those articles and anything else you really want to send us. We'd love to include in the show notes, or point in your direction. But thank you so much for making the numbers clear and helping these guys understand this stuff. I think it's gonna be interesting to track this grocery stuff and how it impacts the behavior of restaurants. Where can everybody find you? Where can we send everybody who wants everything about what you're doing?
Yeah, so you can connect with me on LinkedIn, Nicole Larson, or on Instagram. My at is retail in real time.
There you go. What more do you want than that? Nicole, thank you for the time. Thank you for scheduling this. I know we were able to make it happen. I know you were super busy. And yeah, everything will be in the show notes, how you get in touch with Nicole, all of her reports.
Okay.
And I will see you in New York in a couple weeks. I mean, by the way, guys, Colliers reports and Nicole's reporting are like the industry standard. So if you want to take a dive into this stuff, I know it can be a little bit heady. You don't really want to deal with some of this stuff, but there's AI now. You can summarize things if you want. Trust me when I tell you the
I
information that
try
you
to
need.
write as simple and clear as possible. I don't like the big words. I don't like to get too fancy.
Yeah. What's that they say? Like right at the fifth grade level. That's what people want. That other people understand. So, which is kind of like, what the hell was I doing the rest of those 7 years? But different show. All right, Nicole, thank you so much. And I'll see you soon.
Thank you.
All right.